Okay, that's great. So warm welcome to the first event of our new Roundtable series, Let's Talk About. And today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. We all use already artificial intelligence, and we are often not even aware of it. But if you think of navigation systems, and you think of text translations, or music and film recommendations, chatbots, or if you think of mobile phones and the voice controls of mobile phones, or think of voice controls of smart home devices. They all are the results of intelligent algorithms and AI. And they are used by billions every day. And what to feed them? Yes, data.
And guess what? Our human voice is one of the most comprehensive data carriers. It allows all sorts of conclusions like about your weight, height, your social status, and even some health biomarkers like Alzheimer or COVID. I think it's pretty clear. There are enormous opportunities, but also challenges in dealing with voice data. From my point of view, being aware of that is the most important topic.
Yeah, and this is why we talk about ethical AI or AI ethics today. We'd like to raise awareness, and we'd like to give you a better understanding of the topic. And now I'd like to introduce our panelists, and I'd like to start with Angelica, please.
Thank you very much, Malte. Yeah, my name is Angelica Power. I work as a senior manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and here I founded in 2018, which is quite a while ago, the Corporate Digital Responsibility and Digital Ethics Competence Center. And here we did a lot of thought leadership, but we also help companies to actually bring digital ethics into practice. And my second pillar in the company is managing projects in the context of business process intelligence. And I also want to mention, before I was at PwC, I worked at Fraunhofer Institute with a focus on AI, on voice, speech recognition. So yeah, maybe also I'm also happy to be a lecturer in these topics. So yeah, I hope I'm looking forward to a great discussion today.
Yeah, thanks, Angelica. And we're moving over to John Stein.
With you, John Stein, an executive director of the Open Voice Network, though based in the States, a global organization, part of the Linux Foundation. And in fact, it's the Linux Foundation's open community dedicated to developing standards for voice technology as it moves forward, and also addressing, I think, in specific to this discussion here today, discussing the ethical questions of privacy, of data ownership, of data use within voice. And I'm just one of 200 volunteers worldwide who work on this topic within the Open Voice Network. And those of you from the Open Voice Network Ethical Use Task Force, welcome to this call. I'll do my best to reflect your great work.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And moving over to Mirko.
Yeah, thank you, Malte. My name is Mirko Saul. I'm the head of innovation from Schwarz Digital, part of Schwarz Group, which I think most people are more familiar with, our friends Lidl and Kaufland. And in this role, I'm doing a lot of evaluation of technology together with my team. So really taking a look at the challenges and the value and the possibilities of the latest technologies for our company. And obviously AI and voice is one of these technologies. And I've been quite a long time now, more than 19 years or almost 19 years with the company. Before that, I held different consulting responsibilities. And I mean, we see it from a user perspective. I mean, we want to use AI, we want to use voice, but we are also aware of that we need trust from the users because otherwise they will not use it. And that's why we support the Open Voice Network. And that's why I'm also here today to talk about the ethical use of AI.
Malte, you are on mute, it
Yes.
looks.
Yeah, thanks, Mirko. Last but not least, Bernhard, our host.
Hi, guys. Very happy that we made it today with this kickoff for the series. Let's talk about voice. And this is the first event of a series. I'm Bernhard Hofstetter. I'm within DT now 20 years, roughly 15 years in innovation, and since 5 to 6 years on voice. So 6 years ago, we started with our voice journey. It was a hell of a ride with a lot of learnings, launched speakers and stuff. And at the moment, I'm executive product manager and responsible for the Deutsche Telekom voice platform. And obviously, if you build such a platform, you need to follow AI ethical standards. It's very important. It's key. If not, you can close your business from one day to the other. And it's also very much linked to the basic principles of Deutsche Telekom. We have, I think, a very well-known brand, which is closely linked to trust. So this we really we must not endanger. Therefore, data sovereignty and other aspects of ethical AI are very important for us. And we thought it's a good opportunity today to also share this, let's say, awareness with you and have a nice discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Bernhard. So before we start, I'd like to address our audience out there. So if you have a question at the end of the discussion, we have like 10 to 15 minutes time to answer your questions. Please state them in the chat window, and your questions will be read, and then we are able to take a couple of them at the end of the discussion. Okay, so we just mentioned it in the intro. Voice is our very comprehensive information and data carrier. First, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what major advantage do you see for voice in combination with AI? Maybe in combination with a positive example from your professional background. So maybe we start with Angelica.
Sure. Yeah, in the past few decades, I think we have seen an explosion of voice interfaces, and I noticed, we use voice to access financial accounts, health records, and so on, and it's all attached to very personal information. But I also think that voice, being a biometric data, can be used to, for example, predict and monitor our physical and mental health, for example. And I believe there are many other maybe untapped opportunities in voice. But it must be secured, it must be treated ethically from the very beginning, from the very start, because we talk about very, very personal information.
Yeah. Mirko, maybe you can enlighten us a little bit with an example from your professional background. Do you already use voice in some use cases, any kind of processes?
Yeah, as you asked, what the advantages are of voice, and together with AI, of course, it's one of the, or maybe the most natural user interface for IT systems. So it's much more intuitive than typing something into a keyboard or touching on a screen. So that's why obviously voice is very simple, very easy to use. And this is also from our point of view, the big advantage for using voice together with AI. Examples, obviously, anything, especially for us as a retailer, which has to do or to make the life of our customer easier. If it's using AI together with voice at our customer care service centers to offer a customer service around the clock, to answer questions faster, but also internally to make our internal processes more efficiently. So, for example, to use it in our stores for our store employees, so that they are able to ask easy questions to a system instead of having to call a colleague, which maybe is not available at this time.
Mm-hmm. Moving over to Bernhard, maybe you can delve a little bit into the biomarker example you mentioned in the intro.
Sure. Maybe also other aspects, if you like. We started with end consumer products, and there it was very much, let's say, helpful to ease very long queries with voice. So if you want to search something, it's very, very, uncomfortable to do this with a tiny keyboard on the TV remote control, for instance. This is one typical example, and I think you can use this also in business context. Yeah? Another important topic is whenever you want to be hands-free. So for instance, if you are a worker on a heavy machine and you need your hands and they are oily, whatever, what can be more easy than using voice? This is one thing. Healthcare, the first thing which comes into my mind is something which we will launch every day. And I think in the COVID situation, what would be more nicer at the moment right now, if you could schedule, for instance, a appointment for the next vaccination of the, everybody's waiting for the booster, via a phone bot, 24/7, always available, and the health worker could concentrate on doing the vaccinations instead of taking up the call. These things can make life far better for everybody. It's human-centered, and on the same time, it raises efficiencies. I mean, there are tons of potentials.
Wow, these were just like a lot of quite convincing ideas and cases. John, would you like to add another few?
I'll just add to the great comments made here, but also point, as we have entered the digital world, and let's go back to say 1980, we've had all kinds of different devices, be they tablets, be they smartphones, be they smart speakers, etc. But with the exception of voice, which is easy to use, inclusive across languages potentially, great for all kinds of underserved populations. In all other cases, we've been using 19th century technology, that is typing, to access the 21st century digital world. And now we have a step into a 21st century interface that, again, inclusive, easy to use, hands-free, hygienic. And so we have a remarkable potential inclusive step in front of us. And so, and also I'd add this, voice not only speaks, but voice listens. And so the ability, say, in aging in place to hear if a senior citizen has fallen or has an issue. Bernhard mentioned all kinds of opportunities in healthcare, all kinds of opportunities in commerce, as Mirko identified. In fact, we go across the vertical industries, there are not just dozens of use cases. There are use cases that can automate processes and that can ultimately will transform and recreate business processes because of the ease of all you have to do is say yes. This is a remarkable transformative evolution in front of us that's going to turn into a revolution. We're just at the first stages of it. And to Angelica's great point, at all points and all times as we go through this evolution and revolution, are we using this properly? Are we using the data, the technology, the ease, and what we learn by the listening? Are we using it ethically, appropriately, legally?
Okay, thanks for your contributions here on the positive side. Now I'd like to have a look on the other side, on the dark side. So just starting with an example, only recently there was a big fraud with a bank in the United Arabian Emirates. There was a bank clerk, he got a phone call from a CEO of a company, and he knew that voice before from another call. And this CEO arranged everything with this clerk to make a bank transfer for a new acquisition in the height of $35 million. And in parallel, this clerk also had like 2 emails from the CEO and another one from a lawyer. And so after this call, he made the transfer and he thought everything was okay. But it was not the CEO who was calling him, it was a deep voice fake. So it was one of the first cases that came to notice. So maybe you see some, let's say, some fields where we have to be very cautious when it comes to voice, just like thinking of what our voice transports in terms of biomarker information and information depths. So Bernhard just like mentioned 20 different biomarkers. So maybe I speak to a customer care agent with Lidl or with Schwarz, and I'm not being aware of that I may be infected with COVID-19, but potentially the other party I'm talking to might know So the question is, how shall we handle this information? So when the other party might know more than me, which is not, let's say, the fair or the right case. Maybe I bring it over to, maybe I would like to ask all of you about the, let's say, the dark side of voice data abuse, or let's say, it's not the correct ethic usage of these data. Any kind of ideas with regards to that? Maybe we start with Angelica.
Yeah, those are quite impressive examples, scary also. And I believe like the first example was about fraud, like about trying to do bad things. And I believe in that sense, we need to make sure that we have security controls, but we also have a lot of unintended consequences of this technology. Maybe things we didn't think about before, but it can also happen. And I want to add one more example, which is for me always scary when I think about it when it comes to children. A lot of children interact with voice assistants and have access to a lot of information through that, where it might not be suitable for them. So I think we need to make sure that the assistant doesn't bring something inappropriate up in that sense. So there should be a parental control or something like that. And I believe if we ask the right questions when we develop the technology, and the question is, how does it benefit us, and not the danger, trying to develop dangerous technology. And I believe that if we ask the right questions, we can think these things ahead, like the unintended consequences, and trying to adapt systems, security controls, parental controls, and so on, to actually make sure the usage is, in our sense, the right one.
Okay, so Mirko, what is your opinion about the dark side of voice data usage?
I mean, of course, like with every technology, it's the question how you use it and who uses it and in which way. And the same is true for voice AI. As I said at the beginning, I think what is really important, that if we really want that the users make use of AI-based chatbots or voice bots, then we need to earn their trust. And I think for us, it's important that first that we kind of have to educate the users so that they are aware. If they speak, of course, you have to make clear that they are speaking to a voice assistant, not to a human person. And after you make it clear, then we have kind of to educate them that they are aware of what kind of information they also give just with speaking, also as Angelica mentioned. So it's not just the information you give over what you say, but also how you say it, and what possibilities the voice assistant has to use this information. So it's kind of, on the one side, educate the user so that they are aware of what they're doing, and on the other side, of course, setting rules, setting guidelines for the use of AI in your company, and make this transparent to the user so that she or he is really aware of who they are talking to, and what kind of information is going to be extracted, and how this information is going to be used.
Yeah. Bernhard, so the Deutsche Telekom also developed guidelines with regards to usage of artificial intelligence. Maybe any further comments from you?
Sure, true. By the way, these are transparent, and you can download them even from the homepage of Deutsche Telekom. Quite comprehensive set of generic guidelines, but I think also with very heavy cornerstones. Yeah? I mean, what's important from that point of view, a lot of things have been mentioned already. So one is transparency, which is a key. Yeah? So people need to know that they act with the KI, that they know which data is stored, that they give implicitly the right to do so, and always also the right to erase it. Yeah? So there is a clear set of rules which one need to follow. Besides of that, yeah, we need to make sure that we use the technology for good. It should be human-centered to solve a problem for human beings, and we need to make sure that this technology stays under our control over the whole delivery chain. Yeah? We can't say, we use this component from somebody else, and you can't outsource the problem. Yeah? We need to keep the technology under control and think it through till the end. If not, you lose control, and this can be really, really dangerous if it comes to the AI, voice data, and all the threats we just heard.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in more about the guidelines, just go on telekom.de and you'll find those on the net.
Yeah. John, what is your opinion about this?
And Malte, just several things to add to the great comments being made, and let me underscore what Mirko said. It can work for good, it can work for bad, and let me speak to the bad. And the fact that there is the prospect of a bad is one of the reasons why the Open Voice Network has created an ethical use task force, learning from the work of Deutsche Telekom and many, many others. Oida, if you'd be so kind as to put your email in chat, Oida Coleman of the Open Voice Network is leading and managing that work. But to your question, Malte, it may be helpful for us to think of outside of our organization and inside of our organization. Outside of our organization, there indeed may be the threat from, let's call them fakes or synthetic voice. And you gave the example of the the multi-million-dollar theft using a synthetic voice. There are approaches that we can take as a community and as a society to identify what is synthesized, what is real. We can also put in security measures, second factor authentication, the like. But it's real. It's out there and it's happening, and the world of synthetic voice is growing. Again, one of the reasons why Open Voice Network is studying it and will be recommending some standards and some steps that will be taken. But I would say it's also on the inside of an organization because, as Bernhard said, the richness of voice data, it is a biometric. That is, it can identify you. It can be a biomarker, and as Bernhard said, can identify any number of physical and mental states. One can also take the tonal, the sentiment, the word choice, and the like, and this is what gets very interesting or scary, is begin to infer what gender, what ethnicity, what level of education, what level of income, and if you begin to take that to a personal level, now you can be making assumptions about an individual which may be entirely wrong. Is that appropriate? Is that ethical? Well, we should be questioning all that. And of the multiple things you can be either directly learning or inferring through AI about an individual from his or her or their voice, a lot of major questions, Malte, to your great, to the issue here. And it's all something to be studied. Finally, Bernhard, Angelica, and others, Mirko mentioned here consent, transparency. Is the data being used for what it should be? Is the data being used for what it's been promised? There's a number of guidelines, and the Deutsche Telekom ethical use guideline for AI, a great example of how we need to be thinking about this. And I know that Angelica and PwC have done similar work. And it's everyone's issue, not just the voice people, not just technologists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like it. So it's not only just like a company's responsibility, it's every person's responsibility to use data appropriately and responsibly. That leads me over to the business perspective. So just like imagine if I would be just like a mid-scale or small-scale company. So what would be the first steps towards ethical AI I should take? Angelica, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so in our customer projects, we help companies a lot with that question, like how can we actually implement, I would say, digital ethics, and then how can we adapt it? And I believe the first steps should be criteria for the usage and development of AI. And those should be based on principles that put humans at the center, on moral, ethical guidelines. And we see that a lot happening. A lot of companies actually push those principles out. And I think what is really important is that the companies actually also take the responsibility and implement it, operationalize it, and don't just publish the good principles, basically put them in the drawer and we're done with that. That doesn't work in this sense. So companies need to actually make it part of their DNA, of their processes, of their roles, of their KPIs, and so on. And then it's a topic for C-level. It's a very important topic because it's a mindset. You want this ethical mindset in your company. And of course, we're here at the beginning, but we're still making experience with especially that topic. Like how do we actually do that? But I think it's important to start as a company, and it's important to ask the right questions. And I believe what's really a good tool to operationalize it is also training, certifications, building awareness in the whole team with all of your employees. And I found it very interesting that Gartner said in a report that 100% of individuals working in AI development and training must actually demonstrate expertise in the responsible use of this technology. And there you can also see how trainings and certifications are good tools to bring it into the companies. For some, that's just some examples.
What could companies do to, let's say, to limit the skepticism which is still out there when it comes to AI? As you know, media mainly reports about the bad or, let's say, negative effects stronger than about the positive effects. So what could companies or institutions do to gain or get more attention about the positive effects of artificial intelligence? Bernhard?
I think this leads again to what we said before, transparency in the first place. So make sure that everybody knows what you're doing, that you only do things in content with a customer expectation, and also be transparent about how the technology works. So, I mean, it's a fact that state-of-the-art machine learning AI relies heavily also on manual work like annotations. That's still a fact. I mean, we need to come out of that, but currently that's a fact. And people need to understand why you do it. You don't do it because you want to listen to people. It's even the opposite. You want to do it to do quality control and make sure that only what is supposed to be recorded is recorded. So it's a quality measure, yeah? And you need to explain this and again, that people can understand what's happening and have the transparency. So I think before we even talk about opportunities, first start with the basis and explain what AI really is. AI is just such a buzzword, and people don't understand what's behind it. It's not even so magic as people. Describe it in simple words which people understand.
Is Lidl or Schwarz Group working on any kind of, let's say, studies, surveys, use cases where voice AI brought any kind of benefit to your customers' users? Are you actively publishing anything like this? So if not, would that be a good idea to gain more, let's say, positive feedback in the society about voice AI or AI in general?
Yeah, I mean, we are really at the beginning. As I said, of course, we are already using in some specific use cases voice AI. So, for example, at our customer care center, and what Bernhard said. I mean, what is important for us is that the customer is really aware of who they are talking to, so that they can make an informed decision and maybe stop using the service if they don't like to talk to a machine, instead then call the next day because they prefer to talk to a human. That's the one thing. And on the other side, of course, we first really have to figure out what makes sense for the customer, what they really use, what they really want, and then only collect and use the data which we really need for this use case. And as I said, as we are still at the very beginning, there are only the first very few numbers when it comes to how people are using it, how they accept it. So it's far still a little bit too early to publish any kind of surveys or studies about this.
Okay, so there's, I think it's one very clear guideline we heard now several times. that a customer or any kind of, let's say, any kind of interacting group should be aware that he's now talking to communicating to a chatbot, not to a human being. So this is just like one quite dominant guideline. Are there any else? Maybe Bernhard, you can tell us from your expertise, just like 2 or 3 ideas.
I mean, maybe we also start with the basics. So again, data privacy and security are very important. Yeah? We learned how important voice data is and what it can unleash, all these biomarkers, state of the health, all that. So really make sure that you do the utmost best to protect this data, that you don't lose control over it. I need to say, keeping the technology and the data under control is, I think, of utmost importance, if not even. It can endanger also your business. Yeah? It's really, really important. Besides of that, maybe bias is a thing which we didn't touch yet. KI, machine learning algorithms, let's say, tend to get a bias due to very limited training data you have. For instance, if you have a smart speaker and you talk to it, and maybe this speaker is mainly used from a certain group, let's say more male than female, then suddenly these algorithms start to understand males better than females, and this is not right. So you need to make sure that you get these kind of bias out of the system. Also, different ages, you know, social backgrounds, dialects, all that. It's important that you try to deliver a technology which is bias-free.
Well, I think there's also the topic of, let's say, data quality bias. So there's another very prominent example from Amazon. They used the self-developed AI in order to optimize the recruiting process. And in the end, it came out that more male applicants were promoted or got the job, but that was traced back to the fact that somehow this data was kind of somehow biased because there were just much more male, a higher percentage of male persons involved in this training data. So what can be done to prevent data bias in general? Are there any kind of models, frameworks to do so? Maybe John, do you know anything about that?
I think in multitude, a great question, and Bernhard, thank you for bringing up the issue of bias. The immediate question, and Mirko, Angelica will also add into this, is asking, what is the state of my training data? How broad and inclusive is it? Or is it just individuals who look like me and sound like me, because that are the group of individuals who are creating the algorithms, and so we're just going to do this? You know, it is the core question. Is the AI biased? No. Is the training data poorly managed, poorly developed? Yes. And as we look around in voice, we look at some of the work of Martin Lens Fitzgerald in the Netherlands. We look at the work of Mozilla and NVIDIA of trying to build very broad, inclusive data sets so that everyone can be heard. And that's at the core of it. So it's, you know, this is a key question for all of us in voice, let alone AI. But again, it starts with demanding and challenging the quality of the training data.
Okay. Mirko, do you have any experience with regards to data bias? So what is your background here?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, if you want to train an AI system, having clean and unbiased data would be really a nice foundation. And the reality is what Bernhard said. I mean, still, usually you need a lot of annotation to the data today. And there usually the annotations are done by humans. So you have to make sure that the humans who do the annotation have some strict and very clear guidelines so that at least you try to reduce the bias as much as possible.
by looking at the AI processes and projects in your company, maybe you can show us an example where you get some unexpected results. So maybe not on the bias side, maybe on the positive side. There were any kind of surprising key learnings you made?
Like with technology or like with a lot of use cases, what usually comes up is that quite often the very simple use cases, at least from a point of view of the developer, are the use cases which are used by the customers most of the time. So in our case, simple things like asking for opening hours, which is maybe from an external point of view a very simple basic thing for a retailer, is a very, let's say, heavy used feature, because obviously there are a lot of people who want to know the opening hours of a store. So this was kind of surprising that such a simple, very basic use case is used that often.
Banner, from your background, any kind of surprising outcomes, insights where you say, wow, we did not expect this?
Maybe not such surprising, but something I think which is important for people who want to build voice UIs in the future. And this has just been proven again that this is true. Don't try to copy your last UI, web UI or mobile UI on voice. Just don't do it. Voice UI will not replace other UIs totally. They will just comprehend them. So for instance, as said, long searches, it's great at voice UI. But if you want to swap from one TV channel to the next, I guess everybody would still prefer the remote control. So make sure that you use multimodal experiences and use a UI where it is best for. Yeah? What is really bad on voice, for instance, is discoverability. It's really hard to find data or categories or whatever. It's an unsolved problem, I think, in this on voice. Yeah, so don't copy a UI and don't think you need to replace your website by voice. Will not work.
Yeah. Okay, Angelica, would you like to add something from your background and expertise, experience?
I don't have such like surprising experiences with AI in a positive context. I can only think of the negative ones where AI learns new languages and we don't understand it anymore. And I think what I wanted to add was like usually when we talk about the bias as if it would be absolutely known facts. And I believe that we have a lot of bias in us. And the AI doesn't have that problem. We have that problem, which we don't know yet. So what comes to me like in the last couple of years was that I believe that we can learn from AI about us as well. Like we just need to be aware of it, and we need to pay attention, ask questions, and think about what we actually want to have as an outcome. But if we see it like that, I mean, we also talk about garbage in, garbage out. Like when the data has bad quality, the training data comes only from very homogeneous data. So that we need to go away from that. And I believe if you, for example, build like you have diverse teams at the development stage, which can actually help to design an inclusive AI, inclusive voice assistant, because with diverse teams, you have different perspectives on the table. And I believe this is the things we can actually do to learn about our biases, especially the ones we don't know about.
Yeah. No, thanks, Angelica. So after we have stated the past and the present, I would like to make an outlook into the future. So how could a prosperous future with in combination with voice AI look like? Maybe there are some promising developments from your background here. John, any idea?
There's a lot of ideas.
Pitch me the future, please.
Well, we may still be here 2 hours later, Malte, so that's a dangerous question to ask all of us. There's 2 or 3 things that I think are critical, and the future of voice and AI, I think, is dependent upon a concept we've touched on here, but perhaps not explored, and that is user trust. and user trust will be built. And Angelica said it perfectly well. It starts, it must be human-centric. It must be user-centric, and there must be a trust by the user, and that user can be an individual or it can be a corporation, that this is equitable, that this voice thing and how it uses my data, who claims the data, how I can connect, how it can be discovered, that it's as good for me as it is for a provider. And that is the starting point. And then from that level of trust, is it good for me, or is it only good for you? From that point, we then build and create the governing structures that exist across multiple industries that would include the development of communally developed standards, communally adopted broadly on such things as how do we protect data? How do we use data? Is voice interoperable? All the different things that are in front of us, that are on the list of the Open Voice Network, that will lead to us. And then where is that future? That future has the potential, should we choose to focus it and build it on a basis of trust, that future has the potential of being a worldwide voice web of not just hundreds of thousands of skills or actions, but of millions and billions of AI-based destinations, easily found, where we use voice as our natural interface to communicate and to learn from, interact with the digital world of its entirety. That's what's out there. But our choice is right now, will we build that on trust and the equitable playing pitch that all of us would want? Big question before us.
Yeah, I think we just started to scratch the surface here. Mirko, what is your idea? What is your outlook for the future of voice AI?
Well, I would like to say it from a point of view from a customer, from a user. I think most will agree that today the use of voice assistant is still, let's say, in a very basic manner. So it's more like giving commands and getting an answer, or getting an action in the area of smart home. And I think if you really want that users have a higher adoption of using voice assistants, then of course we have to make sure what John mentioned, that they really trust in it, but also on the other side enhance the possibilities in terms of that we should offer the user more kinds of a dialogue instead of just giving a command and getting an answer. And this is something which of course is quite complex, but I think which is necessary to drive adoption and also to be able to offer more useful use cases to the customer.
Yeah, thanks. Angelica, what is your idea about the future?
Yeah, sure. Well, I absolutely agree with what already has been said, that we actually, I believe nobody wants to build dangerous AI systems, so we have to figure out what doing the right thing actually means for us, and we have to build it on trust. And talking about the future of AI in combination with voice, I do see at the moment that there is a massive investment from the private sector, like also Telekom, in virtual assistants in general, also combined with voice. And I believe that could be a driver for actually, like, this investment actually can lead to a super intelligent virtual assistant, and those can perform highly specialized skilled specialists. So for example, and I'm saying this out loud, a virtual auditor or a lawyer, or you see doctors who are providing more correct diagnosis and so on. So in that sense, it could be that there is expert specialists available for everybody, and not just for some who have the money, the time, or the infrastructure resources. And yeah, I believe AI is getting more and more powerful, and virtual assistant's voice is actually a big driver. And this means that we have to actually create AI that does the right thing even more. So trust is the basis for everything, and we cannot do it afterwards. So the Botsman says trust is a confident relationship with the unknown. And if you lose that trust, it's really hard or impossible to get it back. So we need to do it right.
Yeah, that's a very nice closing word for our discussion here. I'd like to thank you first for your very, very valuable contributions. Before we get into the Q&A section, I think we have like 10 minutes left, so I'd like to take some questions here. So the first question was a long one. I'll read it to you. So, do you think it would be a good approach to make use of sensible data, e.g. health markers, specifically in a corresponding use case, e.g. in disease prevention, while taking all the necessary data protection measures? Question mark. This could teach users in a safe environment what can be done with their data and make them sensitive to the risks as well as opportunities. Bernhard, you mentioned the biomarkers.
Sure.
This one is.
I mean, yeah. I don't know how the others see it, but I don't. Give me a second. I don't favor too much to get these kind of sticks in my nose twice a week to see whether I have COVID or not. And I would really like to prefer to speak in the microphone and get the answer immediately. So I think it would make my life and your life much better, as long as we know that data is stored, processed, and all that in the right way. So of course, it has all kinds of positive effects. Yeah? We know that already today, doctors use photos to spot cancer and AI algorithms better than the human eye. We can do similar things with the voice. Yeah? So if we use it for good and protect the data right, it has huge opportunities, and of course we should use the technology for good.
Thanks. The next question. At the beginning, there are people do programming and stuff. Isn't the main question not about ethical AI, but about ethical people? If something goes wrong, is it correct to blame people or software? Combined with ethics, they might be different in different societies. So we did not yet have the cultural or the societal aspect. What appears ethical to us may look totally different to other people in other countries or cultures, societies of the world. This is not really just like a question, but I'd like to address this to you. Any comment to that?
Malte, you were a bit broken. Whom did you address the question to?
To John. So this is about what we had before. It's more about ethical people and less about ethical AI. And might there be a difference between the notion of what is ethical regarding different societies and different countries and different ethnies of this world?
Questions there, and let me speak to them quickly. The first is, yes, it does come back to ethical people. As Mirko pointed out, the technology can be good, it can be bad. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. It comes down to ethical people and individuals operating within and working within, living within their culture, and there will be cultural differences of the rights that must be protected, privacy rights within Europe, GDPR, and the values that as a society we believe ought to be promoted. And that can be, and we're talking about values such as transparency, such as consent, such as just the protection and the data sovereignty. To Bernhard's example of the use of voice and voice analysis for healthcare, if I am a patient, but I am aware that my voice may be analyzed in this way to the benefit of me and my family, that's goodness, that's great. But if I'm an employee and my employer is using similar type analysis to make other decisions about me, that may be on the different side of the equation. So ethical people working within ethical frameworks that are appropriate for their societies, and there's differences around the world. We know that. But again, there are rights to be protected and there are values to be promoted. We as the voice community, as the AI community, need to understand both.
Yeah, thanks, John. Looking at the clock, we have a few minutes left. I'd like now move over to some final statements, final thoughts from you, maybe anything I missed to ask. So this would be your stage, starting with Angelica.
I was hoping somebody else goes first. What did I not mention yet? No, I believe everything was basically already said, but I think we have a great opportunity here with voice and AI, the combination of it. We all believe in it, and the only thing what can actually come in our way is if we don't do it ethically and if you don't put the human at the center. Maybe one more sentence to what you said before. There are different countries with different ethical principles, but in the end, human rights should be all the same, and I think that should be in the center of AI as well. And I believe we can do that, and then we can actually make the most out of this technology.
We couldn't hear you, Malte.
Mirko, any final thoughts, statements, ideas?
So as I stated before, so two things which I already said. I think always come from your customer. Keep your customer in mind when you're doing things and offering them what he really wants, what she really needs. And the second thing is educate the customer, but not only the customer, but also your developers. Because in the end, I mean, it's good if your customer know that he's talking to a chatbot, but also it's really important that your developer understand when he creates the chatbot what he should take care of and not.
Thanks. John, any final words?
I'm just going to repeat what others have said and emphasize it. Human-centric, human-centered, trust-based at an individual and a structural and a governance levels. We need all of that. And number three, let's continue to ask the questions. So appreciative of Deutsche Telekom raising these issues here today. We have to be asking the questions, raising the issues for us to properly address this. So thank you, Bernhard and the Deutsche Telekom team. Thank you.
Your final statements?
There were so many great final statements. I don't want to weaken them. I mean, everything said. I would just like to thank all of you, thank the panelists, and thank the great interest of so many people joining our event. A lot of great questions. I'm sure Spalte, and I hope we will record all of them so that we can be able to also give answers later on. Maybe on our website, and yeah, keep this conversation open. This is just the beginning. I hope we raised some awareness today. This was our goal, and this was also only just the beginning of our event series. Let's talk about. Next one will come in the next year, beginning hopefully, and maybe we can continue this conversation. And I hope I didn't took your words out from your tongue now, Malte, so I give it back to you.
That's totally okay. So two heads of the same thought. So you were first, that's fine. Maybe just to sum it up a little bit. So what we've talked here. So Angelica sees on one hand massive investments of the personal sector when it comes to AI, especially when it comes to virtual assistants. And very interesting aspect that we also have to learn from AI, that AI could be like a mirror to us. And also with regards to the garbage in, garbage out idea. So which is just like the bias concept as well. So it's not the AI which is a bias, it's us. And so we have to be very cautious with this. Yeah. And of course, when we look at the business perspective, especially in customer care, when we look at conversational AI, there are enormous opportunities to leverage efficiency. So this is what we learned from Mirko here. We have to educate the users. So it's a task also from companies and institutions to bring out what the potential is of these systems here. And from Bernhard, we know, so it's very important that training data is unbiased, that we have just like clear data here, and that we have, of course, take a big attention to data security and data sovereignty. So that bias is also a human problem. We have to focus on consent and transparency. John states that the main pillar of all AI system development in the future is user trust. This is what we have to build. And so, as many reference groups are still skeptical about AI, so it makes it more important for companies and institutions to realize convincing use cases and communicate the advantages of AI and contribute to a better understanding and higher acceptance of AI. This said, one more thing is just like certain. It remains exciting. We just scratched the surface, and we need to continue to ask questions. So once again, on behalf of Deutsche Telekom and Magenta Voice and the Telecom Voicification Suite, I say thank you. Thank you to you panelists. Thank you out there at the keyboards and the screens. So see you soon, maybe at our January Let's Talk About Conversational AI event. We will keep you posted with a follow-up email containing the show notes and further information. And don't forget to visit the webpage voice.telecom.com. That's it. Goodbye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.